Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about how major Big Five publishing has been taken over by the celebrity book.
And we're joined with a special guest this week. This is Ariel Gore, who's the author of many books. And she is not a celebrity.
Or it is. I mean, I guess
Depending
it all depends on where you're coming from.
It's true.
It's like
I'm famous.
anybody that when you're a fan of somebody, you perceive that person is famous.
I'm world famous in Portland.
I feel like though, can you go to the grocery store without someone taking your photo and putting it in a magazine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I'm good at that.
That's less stressful.
That sounds terrible. I'm sorry I said you weren't a celebrity. Now I feel like I dissed you. I meant it as a compliment.
Yeah, I'm not. It's true. I'm not a celebrity.
This is our level of discourse.
I identify as a non-celebrity.
I feel like you're a great example, though, of somebody who is like a very successful author who's written many books and makes a living as a writer and has done that without becoming like a nationwide household name. Like, you don't have to be Danielle Steele or actually, I haven't heard of a lot of people who are household names.
Wait, who are the celebrity writers?
Yeah, and I think
I
think that's a lot of what it is, though. Is it's like the people that are big names to me, maybe sell 5,000 books, and the people that are actually big names I've never heard of. And I think that's a lot of it too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of what we've There's been a major shift in the last 11 years where it's become less and less about what a person has to say or the compellingness of the way that they say it, and has become much, much more about how big is their platform.
Right, and if the book is part of their brand, it's just sort of having you have an action figure of yourself, you have a book, you have your social media feed. And that's a world, whatever, if that's what you want, so it's fine, but it's not exactly the kind of writing that we're talking about. And it's so interesting because the same publishers who are really leaning into that, we're only doing celebrity books. If you don't have 1 million followers, what are you doing here? They also complain about dwindling readership. Nobody reads anymore. It's maybe you could find out what all these non-readers would like to read, and some of us would like to read cool stuff by people who are not celebrities and people who are like us and people who are just thinking, thinkers. You might want to read a book by we used to have hermited writers. We used to have reclusive writers, and that would be an okay thing to be.
Right.
And people might want to read their stuff, but so it's just this funny thing where publishers are you have to be a celebrity to write a book, and nobody's reading. It's
Right. Causation is correlation in this case.
So Joe, what's your analysis of why is this? Why are Big Five houses gravitating more and more towards only people with massive platforms?
Well, the Big Five used to take a lot of risks, and that used to be sort of their role in the industry, is that they used to have, okay, here is a $50,000 advance, debut author, present us with your ideas and, make it real good. And then it became, so many of those books were flops that it shifted that became the role of the indie and the mid-list press. And then now the Big Five became more and more about okay, well, Michelle Obama will be competed with by Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, Hachette, and Macmillan.
Right.
And then by the end, the advance will be so large that they will not be able to recoup on that book. And so then that shifts into the okay, well, who are other kinds of celebrities? Podcasters, YouTube stars, Instagram influencers, and so those are just a much more attainable level of celebrity that has a large platform, but you don't have to pay $4 million in advance, and so, and then what happens now is the greater irony is that then the big five buy the rights to any successful small press or mid-list book, so it's the smaller publishers are still taste making while they're taking and and they're finding out also, which is rather amusing, that a lot of these big name authors aren't actually sought after because their fan bases don't read. So I guess that may be where the doesn't read comes from, because it's we're having a record, more books are selling specifically in the last few years and in general than ever before, and younger people are buying and reading more books, and we've finally moved out of the women over 50 demographic and moved books into the general public, which is helpful, but it's what is being published is still not reflective of that.
And I feel at least as long as I've been kicking around in the publishing industry, small press distribution has gotten so much better that it's almost doesn't matter. It used to be well, I don't want to work with this small press because if by chance my, book kind of takes off, will they be able to handle that? And, some books are, you write them, the audience is going to be 1,000 or 2,000 people. Your publisher understands that, and can scale the operation to that. But then you also want to work with someone who could pivot if you were wrong in those projections, and you could actually, sell significantly more books. And I feel a lot of small presses are more in that position just because the nature of distribution has changed.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. And it's just, and the consolidation of that is such that, you're often being sold by the very same salespeople that you
exactly.
So should authors who don't have a huge platform just not even bother with larger presses?
Well, it's you want to work with the right place. You want to work with the place that gets what you're doing, that can can effectively communicate back and forth what you're going for, who it's for, what they're getting out of it, what the value proposition of the book is. Whereas what happens a lot is people will twist it just too much, and then at that point it's no longer the book you wanted to write. Or it's no longer the book you wrote, is no longer the book that they're talking about.
Right. See that happen all the time, honestly, with people coming to us and they're here's my memoir, and we're turn it into a self-help book, and 1 time out of 10 the person is oh, I actually like that better, and the other 9 times they say sure, and then they turn in the memoir and then they won't change it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been presented to writers as so kind of mysterious, how you would work with people. I mean, I work with giant presses sometimes if it's an appropriate project. Mm-hmm. And I think nobody can get this into the right places except for this giant publisher, and then I have to accept with that I'm going to have no control over the cover or something, whatever the downsides of working with a big publisher. My editor's going to change 3 times in the process. I'm going to get a cover that is completely inappropriate, but I'm willing to take that chance because they have these other resources.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of new writers and a lot of not so new writers who I work with or who are my students kind of have this vision where they're going to start with a small press, that's okay, and then they're going to work their way up to a bigger press in the course of their career. And I find that, well, certainly for me, but a lot of writers I know work with big presses for some of their titles, and they work with small presses for some of their titles, and they, like you're saying, like need to pay attention to, oh, this publisher does not publish memoirs, so, you know, why would they suddenly have the resources to do a completely different marketing plan for my book?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times people, or authors in this case, approach us thinking we won't notice that their book is actually a veiled memoir. Like we wouldn't read it before. I don't know where this idea comes from.
Well, you would be surprised. I mean, like big presses, you would be surprised how much they don't read.
We have seen, so that doesn't surprise me because I've definitely seen a few books recently from big presses where I'm like, oh, I see exactly what happened.
Right.
I was in a marketing meeting not that long ago with a big press crew in New York, and they started hassling me about whether or not I could get in touch with the editor of Hip Mama. And I didn't quite know what to say. So, and I didn't,
Like, we're close.
I didn't want to tell them that I actually could probably get in touch with her since I am her.
It's like brain
But I just
left,
didn't,
brain
like,
right.
I felt kind of grumpy and like a little child. Like I refused to say.
No, and it is kind of like when someone is that far disconnected. Like that's, I think that's sort of the thing people say.
Yeah, I don't know. She's tough to get in touch with. She doesn't really publish that often anymore. But I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, wild. But Anne Halliday said the same thing when she came on, and she was just like, I worked with big publishers. I found that like you're basically always asked to change things that in the end aren't worth it. I was like, right. Oh, that's like interesting. Or it's like no one even consults you when they make some like major gaffe.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting because you wouldn't. I mean, and I guess that's the like downside of having infinite resources. But I think they have such a impossible load. There isn't a lot of onboarding process for authors at big presses, and not even a ton at smaller presses. Honestly, like it's kind of assumed that you'll be available when your publisher needs you, and it's kind of assumed that you'll just pick up whatever conversation where they grab you. And I feel like, so to some degree, it is on publishers to do that part of the job.
These are things we struggle with too.
Sure.
Size,
it's authors have to get it together to some degree to be able to. You have to be able to say what your book is about, and it's challenging, but you have to at some point.
Yeah, we get it a lot where people are like, well, they're having their like star moment, so they don't want to feel like they have to like play any role. They want to just kind of be pampered.
Yeah,
which is an interesting thing.
I don't know. I mean, I see it more as like these are specialized skills. Like occasionally we have an author who just like writes their own marketing copy and it's perfect, and we'll add almost nothing. But that's like one time out of 20.
And we did once receive a book where we only corrected 2 typos, and that was done.
Nice.
That's so like rare. Literally 1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
Like that might happen again in another 25 years. But it's rare because it's like so much of it is the dance together. You're a team.
But it does seem like I do wonder, like these major publishers publishing these celebrity biographies, like how much of the editorial work are they actually needing to do, or are they just kind of taking what comes in and kind of relying on the author's team for that?
Right.
I don't know.
It's, it's different case by case, and it's like imprint by division and such, but and there's definitely, once upon a time we had a very light editorial hand because we were trying to like respect creative choice, whereas nowadays we're like, the reader is the customer, the book is for the reader, the book is not for the author, the book is for the person that is going to love it and enjoy it and like talk about it to their friends,
Yeah.
And that's like, because that's often the distance that the author can't find. You know, they're like way too close, so they just are thinking of it in terms of creative choice rather than like what somebody is getting out of it. Or, you know, which I guess is why they're not great at like making a nice little like capsule speech, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I work on that with my students and, you know, try to work on it for myself. But it's, yeah, a lot of times, you know, people will write a beautiful book and you say, okay, can you summarize? Like, what is your book about? And they'll say, my book is about transcendence.
And dinosaurs.
And it's like,
yeah.
Right? And you're like, I'm gonna need, yeah. No. We take the 5-second pitch, and then we take the outline, and we take the first paragraph of each chapter, and you would be amazed at how little information people can put in that 5-second pitch. They can just be like, it's a book about overcoming, and you're like, overcoming what? For whom? You know, like what? Tell me more. You know.
I don't know. I don't think authors should have to have that specialized skill. Like, I mean, I'm sure it serves you well to be able to do that, but I think that's like the point of working with a publisher is you have someone who has those skills.
Right, a team. But it is partly too that the further along you are at that, I feel like that ultimately replaces platform for somebody without a platform.
That's true.
It's like you're providing why somebody cares.
Right.
You know, or you like have enough in you to make them care.
I feel we've somewhat strayed from our original podcast topic.
Whether you are a big publisher.
But pleasurably strayed.
Well, no, I mean, that's about platform.
Oh,
it's like, it's kind of all goes back to platform. And on that note, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.